Hey folks, in this video, I wanted to provide some travel tips. I know parts of the world are opening up. People are eager to do some international travel. And I've been traveling, with the exception of COVID, pretty hardcore for the past 6 years. And along the way, I've picked up some tips that I wanted to share with you. So the first couple tips first tip is really gonna just be COVID disclaimer. And then after that, regardless of what time or year that you're flying, you should be fine. It's important to know that even though in the US things are opening up and places are going maskless, that is not the case with all countries. So it's super important. If you have been an uninformed traveler before, you cannot be that now. So it is super important to go to the embassy websites of the country in which you're visiting, even the country that you're connecting to. So I had to take a flight to New York at one point, and I went through France. And so there was a series of things I had to do to get into France, and there was a series of things I had to do to make sure I left Portugal. So there was paperwork on both sides, even though my final destination was the United States in New York. So I encourage everyone to go to the websites of the countries that you're going to, particularly embassy, and find out how your nationality is allowed in the country, okay? So if we're going to people's countries, we have to do what's asked of us, okay? That's just common courtesy. So I encourage you to do that. Now, I know, and I've said this before, we have a super supportive community here. The reason why I always encourage people when they tend to ask me, are US citizens allowed in Portugal or any other country? I'm always, going to encourage you to take the time to go to the embassy website, because things change rapidly. By the time we get the information up and we uploaded it, it could have been different based on your nationality. Rules may be different. And if someone is answering your questions in the comments, it could be somebody from a completely different nationality, and they are allowed in the country, and they're telling you yes, yet your nationality is not allowed in certain countries. So I do want to put that disclaimer on. But let's talk about some tips minus COVID that you should look into. The first one is check your passport. And I know it sounds like duh, but we haven't been seeing our passport for a while. And a lot of times, certain countries won't let you in the country based on the amount of months on your passport. If your passport needs to be renewed within 6 months, some countries won't even let you in. Fun fact, when I went to South Africa, there was a gentleman who only had one page left in his passport, and he got denied. I didn't know that was a thing, because again, in those years, I was traveling like a relatively uninformed traveler. So if you go to South Africa's website, in regards to tourism, it specifically states you need one full page so that they can stamp it, and they want one full page. You don't have one full page in your passport, you cannot go to South Africa. So not just South Africa, but any country, find out what is the requirement of your passport in order to get into the country. Because the last thing you want is a connecting flight of you trying to get there and you got to go home. Second tip is pull money out of the local ATM of the country you're going to. If you try to exchange your money in the airport, it is going to be super expensive. Now, if you are going to be traveling a lot, you may want to look at one of the online websites like TransferWise or some of the other ones, because they can give you a card and therefore you can just be charged in the currency, and that's a lot easier. Now, before you leave the country, check with your bank to find out what fees would be associated with that type of transaction and balance it out if it seems that it makes more sense to do that. But typically, if you're pulling money out at the airport, it's going to be substantially more expensive. If you are checking your bags, I would recommend creating one of these. So this is just an emergency bag. This has soap, deodorant, toothbrush, some leggings, and a t-shirt. If it's cold this particular time of traveling, typically I already have a coat, so I just need something to get through. Now, why an emergency bag? This emergency bag will save you in the event that your luggage gets lost. Now, granted, I recommend that you do one bag travel, but that's just me. For those of you who need suitcases, I get it. I was that girl. But if in fact you get your luggage lost in an international location, getting your bags back can take anywhere from a day to 6 days. And trust me, like, I always had good baggage chi. I never had a problem until I went to Tokyo. And there were some bag issues. And at the end of the day, when you've been traveling all day, all you want to do is just take a shower and get clean. And if you have nothing with you, you are going to struggle. So on your carry-on bag, just bring a little, you can put these in the Ziploc gallon bags, and you can push the air out and really squeeze it out to something small. So consider it. Trust me, if your luggage gets lost, you are going to be super happy that you have it and it doesn't take up too much space in your carry-on. Now, if you're doing one bag travel, it's really no need to have an emergency bag. But, you know, sometimes you go to the planes and you think you're bringing your bag on and they tell you that you have to check it. So you might just want to have one ready just in case. Consider creating a cloud folder or set up a separate email address just for travel. That way, whether you're doing hotel reservations or your, tourist attractions or plane, it just goes to that email address. Or you can set up a cloud storage. Now, two things, the reason for this is in the case of any emergency, you want someone in your home country to have access to where you were and what's happening. So if you set aside an email specifically for your travel information, you can pass that information to whoever your emergency contact is so they are aware of what's going on, where you're supposed to be in the event of an emergency. Same thing with cloud storage. If you don't want to set up a separate email address, you can set up a cloud folder and give that link to your emergency contact or anyone else who should know where you're going to be. Now, the things to include in your emergency folder are going to be a copy of your passport. In the event that you lose your passport or it's stolen, having a picture of your passport is going to be super helpful when you have to go to your nationality's embassy at the country in which you're visiting. Any health documentations, not so confidential, but just maybe medications that you're taking or anything like that that would be beneficial, make sure you include that in the folder. It's your emergency contact information, anything someone would need access to in the event of emergency. I really, really encourage people to have some type of folder or email account set up with people before you leave the country. Let them know this is the password or this is the link and go through that with them. It's important to remove old luggage tags. Now this sounds like duh, but oftentimes it hasn't happened to me. I'm usually pretty good with that. There can be confusion in the baggage area. If they're scanning your luggage and it has an old luggage tag, your luggage can go to a whole different country. So be sure that you remove any old luggage tag. Most of the time, your gate agent will help you with that, but I have seen circumstances where that was not the case, so be sure to remove that. Take videos and pictures of your lodging and anything that you rent before and after, and email it to yourself. The email will help you have a timestamp, but more importantly, every time I stay at Airbnb, I videotape what it looks like when I come in, and I videotape what it looks like when I go out, just in case there's any issues. You have a video camera on your cell phone, so why not use it? If you're renting a car, motorcycle, any type of thing, I suggest you do that as well. Plan your travel excursions in advance, but not the day after you arrive in a country. So many things can happen and so many things can go wrong. Your flight may get delayed, you may leave later, and now you have all these excursions that are planned that you can't attend. Now, if they're refundable, no problem, but it's still a headache. It's trying to reorganize all of those excursions when you got into the country late, and you may be tired. So be sure to plan all of your activities in advance, because you can avoid those long lines at most of the tourist attractions by just having your ticket, and oftentimes it's cheaper. So consider doing that. Make sure you don't do it the day after you arrive in your trip, unless it's refundable. One of my little budget solo travel tips is usually I don't go out, depending on the country, late at night, so I still want to experience the food. So I typically will go out to eat for lunch, and then I'll take some leftovers and have it for dinner in whatever lodging, whether it's a hotel or Airbnb that I'm staying at. The dinner menu is the same as the lunch menu, but the lunch menu is cheaper. So you can save a little bit of money there. But more importantly, this, I can't find my Hot Logic. This is one of the best things to get if you travel. It basically heats up your food. And now it's not a microwave, so it's not going to heat up really quickly. But if you're going to do something like go on an adventure, do some sightseeing, you can plug it up. Consider it kind of like a slow cooker, okay? But it's in your hotel room, and it is wonderful. I love this product. You can just get them on Amazon somewhere. Just Google Hot Logic. Now, what I haven't learned yet is if they have an equivalent to one in Europe with a European plug and a European voltage, but I'll check that out and see. But it's the best thing ever, trust me. Now, of course, you're going to keep a card of the hotel or the lodging on a piece of paper as to where you're staying, and you want to download any maps to your phone before you lose Wi-Fi connection. In the event your battery runs dead or your phone, God forbid, gets stolen, you're going to need to know how to get to your location, and you do not want to be caught out there. And speaking of Wi-Fi, I completely encourage purchasing a SIM card in the country in which you're located. Now, I know some people have international plans, but what I've found that happens is the reception is questionable in said country, or after a certain amount of gigs in that country, your Wi-Fi tends to throttle. And it's just been so much easier to just get a SIM card from the country where you're located. They have various unlimited options for, let's say, a month. In Portugal, Vodafone has a really good unlimited gigs for a month for like 20 euros. And so you basically switch out the SIM card. Now, before you leave the country, make sure by your phone company that your phone is unlocked, because that's going to be necessary to use the SIM card from another country. The way you find out if your phone is unlocked is call the company. And just, even if you think it is unlocked, just go ahead and check with your cell phone provider and make sure that your phone is unlocked so that you can use a SIM card. The other good thing about if you get a SIM card from the country, if you are doing any work and you need your phone as a hotspot, I find that the reception is a lot better on the SIM card of the country versus a US carrier or something else. Research where your local embassy is based on your nationality in the country before you get there. Now, most of these things are just in case of emergencies, but trust me, you're going to be so much happier if you already know what that is. Things happen in a split second, and if you're already prepared, you can make things happen. Now remember, embassies are closed over the weekend. Unfortunately, so if something happens, you lose your passport or it's stolen, you'll have to wait till Monday. And like we said earlier, if you have a picture of your passport, it makes the process a little bit more easy. But far as I know, not many countries will let you actually get on a plane with a picture of your passport. So you can go to your embassy and get things like a temporary passport or something that will allow you to get back to your home country. And again, that process is a lot easier if you have a picture of your passport. Map and research your transportation from the airport to your lodging before you get to the country. The last thing you want to do is be in a country and looking like the uninformed tourist. You stick out like a target. You want to know if certain things like catching a ride share, if they even are allowed to come to the country. I know when we went to Colombia, that wasn't the case, and we stood out there waiting for a car, and we didn't know that they weren't allowed to come to the airport because we just didn't research that before we went to the country. So finding these things out before you go, you can feel much more informed. Certain countries, the airport can be relatively aggressive as it relates to taxis. So you just want to make sure so that you're not anxious once you land in the country. Do the research of how you're getting to your lodging before you get into the country. Be sure to check international chargers in addition to voltage. So a lot of the international chargers that exist, fun fact for me, they aren't really equipped to be long-term use. Okay, so since I moved to Europe, I was using a lot of international chargers for certain things that I couldn't necessarily find in Europe when I first moved. Now, it can change the prongs necessary to go into the wall, but what is really important is your voltage. So in Europe, the voltage is higher than it is in the United States. So not only do you need the charger to change the prongs, but you also want to make sure that the voltage is correct, particularly if you are using a laptop. Now, if you have a computer, this is very important. I've had a lot of friends who had their computer burnt out because they didn't get the appropriate plug that would compensate for the voltage difference. That is going to be important, especially if you're a digital nomad and you're going to be working on your computer and having it plugged up for long periods of time. Consider finding the appropriate charger for going out to the specific country in regards to voltage. If you don't know what type of cord that is, be sure to contact the manufacturer of the device that you're using to find that out. If you have an Apple product or Mac, they already have it at the Apple store for international travel, and you'll be fine there. If you're doing solo travel and you're going out and you're by yourself, please consider doing some GPS apps to let someone know where you're going. So for example, if you're an Apple user, you can share your location with whoever your emergency contact or some of your friends before you go out in the event that anything happens. You just want to be safe. WhatsApp also has a feature that allows you to share your location. Again, if you're doing solo travel or not, just send this to someone, your emergency contact, so someone knows where you are at times in the event anything happens. Pack an eye mask. There are going to be times where you're going to be on a plane and there's going to be that one individual just wants to have the window shade open for some reason. Have an eye mask whether you have to sleep in the most random places, because the thing about international travel, you have to be flexible because all types of things happen. But it gives you a sense of learning how to be patient and just going with the flow, and getting that skill is worth its weight in gold because you can apply that in your life. Plus, you'll have all the important things with you at all times. I cannot tell you how many times flights have gotten canceled, or I've slept in an international airport at least twice in my life. Like, things happen, and to have everything that's important to you right with you and you can still kind of move very freely is super important. Considering learning a couple words in the native language in which you're visiting, at least thank you, hello, those type of things really go a long way. Oftentimes, I know when I first moved to Portugal, people were speaking to me and just saying hello or good day, and I just didn't know what the words were. So I would just look and smile, but knowing that goes a long way. So considering how to say hello and thank you and various other short phrases in the native language is important. I am always going to recommend getting a travel backpack. And the reason why I say a backpack over a rollerboard is because the transition from plane to the rest of the country is just substantially easier. A lot of hotels don't let you check in until 3, so then you have to find somewhere to put your luggage and do all that thing. This way, you can be on the plane, jump off the plane, and go ahead and start your exploring and visiting the country and make up for all of those hours. So usually if there's a storm and all flights are canceled, that means everybody who's on that plane with you is probably immediately looking for hotels, and the fastest person wins. So have these in an arsenal so that as soon as you see something looking crazy, you can immediately go into action. So one of the apps that you can look into is an app called Day Use, and one of my friends just put me onto this. I had no idea about this app, but basically it's all the hotels that will allow you to use a hotel for a series of hours, not the whole night, but some all the way up until 8 hours. So this can be a great option if you are looking for a place to stay and it may not be on your hotel apps. Check out Day Use. Pack some food. Listen, you're going to be happy that you have some snacks and some food with you. I pack a whole full-fledged meal when I travel. Like, that is what I do personally. But the reason for this is you got to expect the unexpected when you're traveling. Like, flights get canceled, get delayed, and there's going to be a point where you're going to be in an airport or go to a location and nothing is open and you've been traveling all day and you are starving. You don't want to make some rash decision because you're hungry and you can't think straight. So pack some food. Again, I hope these tips were helpful, and I hope it didn't seem like I'm giving you all of this like emergency advice in case anything happens, but you'd rather be safe than sorry. When things do happen, you're frantic more so because you're not prepared. But if you go in situations prepared, when things happen or if they happen to someone else, you're able to handle the situation a lot better and have a lot less anxiety. So definitely not trying to scare anyone. I hope I didn't. I hope it just gave you something to consider, because when things go great, perfect. But when they don't, you want to make sure that people in your home country have the ability to help you and provide and do what you need necessary. Again, guys, I hope that was helpful. Until next time.